So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jessica Johnson. I'm the Communications and EU Stakeholders Director here at Foratom, which represents the nuclear industry. And before going into the topics that we're going to be discussing today, I just wanted to provide you with some information about the different functionalities that you can use in order to interact with the participants. You will see you have this top toolbar in Teams, and there's a little hand there. If you would like to raise a question in person to one of the speakers, please feel free to lift the hand, and we will then give you the floor. Should you have any questions or clarification about something in the presentation, please raise your hand and we will go to you directly. Otherwise, if it's to do with the discussion itself, there will be a Q&A at the end of this event. In addition, there's a second way where you can raise questions. There's an interactive tool. It's not just an icon just on the right-hand side of the hand. It looks like a little bubble with 3 lines in it. We will be using the VBox tool. When you go into that app, so if you click on the icon, it will take you to VBox. So we'll open a little panel on the right-hand side. In the middle, you will be able to see that you have the option to raise any questions that you would like to raise, and please feel free to raise questions throughout the event, and these will be raised to the speakers after their presentations. And then in the third one, it's actually a poll. We will be running polls during this event, so it'd be great if you can keep an eye on it and respond to any polls that are raised. In addition, at the end of the event, we will be running a kind of a feedback survey through that same polling system. So it'd be really good if you could just spend a couple of minutes at the end of the event completing that feedback form. So I would now like to hand over to the real content of this event, and we will start with a welcome introduction from the representative from the Global Women Hub, Luc Castan. Luc, the floor is yours. And you are on mute, so please unmute yourself. Luc, you are on mute.
Sorry. It's a pleasure to be with you this afternoon for the JWMH. It's nice to be part of this type of event because, as you know, we focus on the change in the society, and we strongly believe that the AI is also one of the game changer in the future, and we hope somehow that it will also play an active role in the life balance and the equilibrium between women and men. So it's good to have this session, and I will not be longer because the content is the AI, it's not anything else. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Luc. So now we hand over to our first speaker today, who is Jean Magne. He is the co-author of the book Fascinante AI. This book is written in French together with Jacques Pignot and Bertrand Foy, and it wants to explain in simple words what we can expect from artificial intelligence, what benefits we can obtain from it, and what risks we could face if we do not pay attention. In the book, the authors discuss the ambiguity of man and his or her temptation to use wonderful tools the wrong way instead of the correct way. They propose criteria for a risk analysis and some ideas to prevent getting into trouble with a poorly controlled AI system. So Jean, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jessica. I'm going to show my presentation, if I can get to it. Yes. Have you a view on my presentation?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So I will not see the little hands because I'm very much concentrated on the presentation, but if you have some questions to just for understanding, please interrupt me. Otherwise, please wait for the end so that we can raise discussions. I intend to highlight many benefits we can expect from AI and highlight some of the risks that we should consider. First, we will discuss about intelligence itself. Then take examples of AI application in our life. This will lead us to consider some defects, and we will discuss the differences between human and machine intelligence in order to pick up the advantages and disadvantages of each before concluding on some topics. we should keep in mind. So what is artificial intelligence? First, can we define intelligence through a categorization? Human intelligence, animals intelligence, plants intelligence, or even objects intelligence? Maybe intelligence is linked to life, considering this aspect. Or should we define intelligence through key features such as sorting things, gathering information, analyzing, interpreting, etc.? Difficult. A common definition of the following is the following, capability to understand a situation and to adapt to it. This is a possibility. Then artificial would be intelligence copied by a machine. Beware, because there's a possible confusion. In English, intelligence could mean collecting information. We think of intelligence service. Then I have three observations. First one is the actual developments of intelligence, artificial intelligence, are really data mining, machine learning, and optimized operations. A second observation is an easy extension to this definition would be get machines to perform activities that are usually done by animals and human beings. This is a definition given by Yann Lequin, who is a scientist, data scientist in Facebook company. Third observation is a more restrictive way to define. AI is not programming, which is giving rules. It is more similar to intuition. This means that we cannot always understand how the result or decision was obtained, but it usually makes sense. And it can make mistakes. Now let's go to daily life applications. We can have, you probably have heard or even experienced yourselves, car drive assistance with the car following the lane correctly and avoiding other cars. Navigation assistance, for instance, Waze gives you a new track as soon as a traffic jam appears. Maneuvering assistance, the car can park alone, adapting itself to the environment. Automatic subways, automatic buses that can avoid people crossing. Freight. Some people are studying connected trucks which would follow each other as trains, with only one driver maybe, would connect to warehouses in order to optimize journeys and freight loads, and would report malfunctions and be then sent to maintenance. I heard a question, is there one? Maybe not. Okay. Weapons. The military is very much interested in AI because it can improve automatic weapons and systems, making them quicker and more accurate. For instance, protecting the fighter with more sensors and early warnings, sharing and organizing information that comes from the combat area. Of course, this increases the amount of data, but a machine can present a synthesis and help in decision making. Improve the fighter's strength. We can imagine an exoskeleton for soldiers in a chaotic environment. Process all the data, react to protect our assets, for instance, Patriot missile systems or Iron Dome in Israel. Deny the adverse protection means. Let's think of Stuxnet virus who discreetly destroyed many centrifugal machines in the Natanz nuclear plant, Iran. Or improve precision of strikes. Nowadays, missile trajectories can be very confusing for the target. Regarding medical processes, researchers have obtained extraordinary results in this field. For instance, we can obtain cancer diagnosis from machine learning. Around 30,000 photos were used to train a machine to detect an outcoming cancer, better than the doctors themselves. Perform high-precision surgery. Operating an eye with a machine causes less damage than a surgeon. Repair human beings with prosthesis. One can use an artificial arm and hand connected to the brain directly. Monitor subjects remotely. Obtain real-time data and interpretation. This could be done using the equivalent to RFID chips used to follow parcels forwarded by UPS and DHL. Predict epidemic propagation using data modeling and calculation, thanks to machine learning based on past experience. Google can predict the spread of an epidemic very well. Train surgeons on virtual subjects, perform remote surgery. This already happened. And this is very encouraging and shows some benefits we can obtain with AI. But in some cases, things can go wrong. You maybe have heard about the awful story of a cyclist killed by a Uber car. The driver was in automatic mode on the highway by night when he saw at the last moment a cyclist crossing in the dark. The driver didn't have time to stop the car. An analysis shows that the cyclist was detected but classified false positive by the embarked AI. A Tesla car also was in automatic mode and the driver was busy with his smartphone, not looking at the road. A truck crossed the road. The car classified the truck as a bridge and aimed at passing underneath. Unfortunately, the driver was beheaded. An autonomous Google car wanted to turn right, but there were works ongoing. So the car detected the bus coming, but thought it had time to pass in front of the bus. Unfortunately, the bus driver didn't slow down. He wanted to go on his way. Luckily, there was no casualty this time. How to solve the tramway dilemma? The dilemma is the following. An autonomous tramway faces a death situation. Going left, it will kill an old person crossing the street. On the right, it will risk killing a woman and her baby, and it has no time to stop. What should be the decision of the AI? In fact, what should be the reactions to unforeseen situations, generally speaking? That reminds me of the autopilot on the Rio-Paris flight Air France 447 in 2010. When the autopilot was lost, it handed over to the pilots who did not understand the situation, and they were unfortunately helpless when the plane crashed. Here appears also an ethical aspect through these situations. How to protect life and human integrity? Who is responsible? The driver or pilot? The system builder? The system owner, such as Uber or Tesla? The AI designer? The cyclist, in the case of the Uber car? You see, some people are thinking of creating a legal robot equivalent to legal persons. I have no answer personally, and I think that I would try hard to avoid getting into such a corner, but this means anticipating and knowing the system's limit. Another question, if trucks are all automated, can we think of reducing costs? The only possibility shown here is reducing drivers' costs. So are we going to dismiss them? And just look at this autonomous car. It cannot get out of the circle because this would mean breaking a rule. Unfortunately, AI lacks sense of humor. What about weapons also? Law of war, we must think of it. By selling weapons, aren't we increasing the gap between rich and poor countries? Will smart landmines become more and more ferocious to the civil people? Is it fair having drones killing remotely, as if the remote pilots were playing a Call of Duty game? What about the right to kill? Can it be delegated to an automatic machine? And what about a machine's moral dilemma? We know that a man can have pity, not a machine which will follow strictly the rules. On the other hand, AI can be deceived as well as men. That happened to USS Vincennes destroyer, who by mistake destroyed an Air Iran civil flight. And Vincennes' commanding officer did not have time to abort the weapon launch in a very tense situation. So here we are facing very uncomfortable situations due to a lack of human control. In the medical field, first questions are linked to data protection. What about an insurance or bank loan if the lender knows all of your medical data? Up to now, only the doctor knew. And now hospitals must worry about protecting your data from stealth and blackmailing. Suppose now that an AI doctor looks after you. You will obtain a standard treatment, which in most of the cases is good enough, certainly. But in some cases, the doctor has to adapt, the human doctor. There's often a necessary compromise between doctor and subject, and sometimes the family. The question is, with artificial doctors, is the subject becoming an object? A positive aspect of AI is easy diagnostics and easy surgery. But isn't there also a temptation to sell these easy services, leading to abusing subjects and causing a risk to health? I have read also some accidents reports in some hospitals due to irradiation overdose. One discovered that the machines had a program error, and isn't there a risk of transforming doctors into super technicians and no more taking care of subjects? Through all these questions, I try to highlight the fact that although AI is providing a lot of benefit, there still are risks, and even some new risks appear. So let's have a glance on anthropology. Naturally, man is ambiguous. A same tool can be goodly or badly used. For instance, a knife can be used to lay butter on your bread or to kill somebody. Nuclear energy can be used to produce electricity or bombs. Hence, the aspect as well beneficial and harmful of many objects. And this is also the case for artificial intelligence. It's the dual technologies principle. So we should always ask ourselves, what can or could be the use of this system or tool? Up to where is the technique controlled? What are the ethical aspects, and have they been considered? Who gets benefit out of a system? Are there privileged people who own it and some who are not privileged since they do not possess the system? Is there a risk of subjugating others? Please note that the big AI designers protect their children. Microsoft and Apple leaders do not allow their children to use smart systems as much as other children. Yes, AI is now being used to detect frauds through behavior analysis. That's the case for banks, and it's a very promising tool. But very soon, hackers will understand how they function and what are their limits. They will probably buy such tools in order to hide better and deceive banks. Ambiguity can be found also in many commercial and administrative areas. You see, you're recognized as an internet user, but we use your features to fool others, etc. I'm not going to read all the picture, but you know that already. If we consider the 9 aspects of intelligence according to Howard Gardner, he listed linguistic intelligence, logical or mathematical, kinesthetics, body intelligence, spatial, visual intelligence, musical, interpersonal, intrapersonal, naturalistic, existential. Some of them may be very well copied by machines, for instance, logical, mathematical intelligence, and maybe it's more performant than humans, but still it remains specialized nowadays. But for instance, linguistic intelligence, a machine can translate when it's technical language but cannot translate hints, sense of humor. This is too difficult for a machine. Here are some principles of machine learning. On the top of the picture, data is entered, pre-processed. The machine learns, and we explain to the machine what are the errors that the error analyzes, so that the machine gradually builds a model. And then, once the model is satisfying, the new data is entered, the model gives a prediction, and we look at the results. Eventually, we can still make a loop to correct the results. On this picture, we have neurons, how neurons operate. So let's say that a neuron is sort of like a little computer, a mini computer. You give the data and each artificial neuron checks some of the features of the picture. It usually works with pictures. The output is given to sometimes a new neuron in the hidden layer, etc. And the neurons each time give the output. At the end, with the output neuron, we compare the result with what is the reality. We give it to the neurons and then they correct their own triggers, their own threshold, so that next time they'll do a better prediction. Briefly, in artificial intelligence, you first recognize shapes or words. Then you recognize complicated shapes or phrases, sentences. Third step is to recognize concepts. And up to now, no computer can recognize concepts. Man can do, not a machine. Here's a picture to show how we can fool a machine. On the left photo, the photo was recognized as a panda with 57% confidence. We added to the picture some pixels. A person looking at the right picture cannot see the difference, but the machine is very accurate, and this time the machine will identify as a gibbon monkey, 99% confidence. For us human beings, it's the same picture. The machine has been fooled. Generally speaking, you can fool captors, you can enter corrupt data, or sometimes enter into the machine and modify the algorithm. So we imagine many possibilities for fooling machines. This is just to give you a glance on some data mining methods. On the top picture, you have two distributions of data in 2 dimensions, the clusters, well, the machine wanted to detect clusters because very often clusters can show normal, into brackets, data. And what is out of clusters may be something abnormal. So upper pictures, apparently, the clusters have been recognized in a sensible way. Underneath, with another method, some clusters have been... Sorry?
Jean,
Yeah.
yes, I have a clarification. What is a cluster?
A cluster is a group of data. If I don't know if you can see my little arrow. A cluster is the little green pack of dots here, the blue pack of dots, and the red pack of dots. And outside of them, there are different data which do not comply with those 3 big groups. Does it make things clear? Okay.
Yes, yes.
Okay. So on the below picture, in one case, the clusters have been sort of recognized by the machine. On the other, you have apparently the machine has difficulties. It does not comply with what we personally would recognize. Look at the picture just above. This shows some bias in the data, in the way we program machines for looking, well, for mining data, and eventually we can fool the machines. That's a consequence. Here's the process without feelings. We perceive information, we interpret, we decide, we act, and then we evaluate the effects. So this, an AI can do perfectly well. Now, if I add to this what human beings do usually, human beings can add some feelings, some sense. They aim at searching something. They have experience and competencies to interpret, intentions to eventually modify the decision. And the same, the designer himself has bias. During his conception of the machine, he organized the logic of the machine in some way which was complying with his own sense. So here we find bias that can be difficult to detect. In fact, the limits of man's imitation by a machine are the following: how to give some significance to a decision on the basis of which criteria. For instance, can I kill a man who is not threatening me, but is threatening other people? Already that's a difficult question for me. For a machine, how can I program this? How to manage a transgressive decision, for instance, overtake a truck with which load may capsize, but for this purpose I must exceed the speed limitation and there's a radar further. How to standardize AI decision making, although keeping some place for creativity. How to copy an intuition, and how to take into account what doesn't make sense. And sometimes things don't make sense to us, but we figure it out and we discover something. Can a machine do this? So we can then face some risks. Abnormal situations or poor modeling can lead us to risks. Does the machine always tell the truth? How to suspect a failure? You know, the person who says, well, I'm sorry, the machine told me to do this, and you have to comply. Can we always trust the machine, especially when the environment changes or the context, or the rules change? What decision? What is the man's reserved area? Training itself. How could we suspect potentially dangerous situations if we lose our training? And can I decently say that the machine was responsible for such a decision? I have no answer up to now. What happens if we lose our know-how? Machines are done for performing repetitive actions, but should we reduce employment due to that? Could we elaborate, for instance, taxes on machine work in order to finance unemployment? What about self-respect, dignity for the unemployed? We have to think about this. How can we replace professions that are disorganized or destroyed by machines? Should we create new jobs consisting of controlling tasks, detecting and correcting malfunctions? This must be anticipated. And a conclusion to this is we must teach people how to learn and not just take profit of a comfortable life ruled by machines. What will happen also in the case of a lack of discernment, of control? What is our own dependence on machines? You know, the smartphone we stare at without noticing people around us, or the GPS when it gets lost. What should we do? What about our own freedom? Shouldn't we maintain our physical and memory capabilities? And up to which extent? If we store all our data, what about our own privacy? There's also sometimes a risk of disorganization. The example of Waze is quite good, I think. It helps us finding our way out of a traffic jam, but often we create a new traffic jam elsewhere because all of us have followed Waze. So how can we take that into account? Just to remind you some human intelligence that can sometimes be surprisingly inventive. I will not read all of them, but during the siege of Tyre, the town, Alexander modified the rules of the game because he built a wharf between the land and Tyre islands. Could an AI do so? The same for Bartholomeus Diaz, who found Cape Hope and how to get to the Indian Ocean, because he bet that the North Atlantic loop found its symmetry in the South Atlantic. So instead of going south, he went west and then south. Could an AI bet that? In fact, could an AI give an opinion or judgment? Could it imagine answers to questions, or even could it raise questions? So I'm going to conclude now. AI offers us many benefits. It can act, explore in a hostile environment, perform many routine tasks, ease decision-making, and present a real-time situation. It can repair, sometimes augment human beings, make life more comfortable, increase accuracy and speed of acts. But it can create new risks and even new threats, because an inadequate response due to biased models or sensors or defects or mistakes, a loss of human know-how. How many of you still calculate mentally how much you owe to the bakers for 2 breads, 6 croissants and a cake? Usually it's the machine who does that. An increase of inequality also. Who benefits and who doesn't? Enslavement due to a quest for power by a happy few. Reduction of individual freedom, or well-imagined Big Brother controlling each of us. AI can also be distracted itself with evil goals. We talked about dual technologies and man ambiguity. It can help controlling big-scale manipulations, influence, stress. So let's think of Alexander Solzhenitsyn's thought. The red line between good and evil passes by the heart of each human being. There's some relationship to clarify, in fact. Who works? Who leads and who gives orders? Who organizes? Who decides? And what are the delegations we can give to each other at first and to machines after? So let's try and keep control of all this. Train man to detect through subtle features that an intelligent system is now downgrading in order to stabilize the system and restore the situation. We should also control the possible bias of the AI. We should understand how and why AI comes to this result. This will give us confidence and establish rules that help evaluating the confidence level to place in an AI. At last, maybe define delegation limits and rules for man and for AI to act together. So let's keep training, understanding issues, including AI benefits, but let's keep an eye on the risks of misuse. Let's keep also our capacity to think, to step back and to judge. AI is a wonderful tool. We should avoid the position of wizard's apprentice. Thank you for your attention. Give back hand.
Thank you very much, Jean. I see that Luc has a question that he would like to raise. Go ahead, Luc.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. Very interesting. So, as you say, it's a very promising technology that can assist people in a lot of areas, but you also highlight the risk, and that's very important to understand the limitations. Now, my question is, from your experience, are we investing enough and in the definition of the risk and thinking about the way to put in place some controls? Because in all this, what I understand, there are two main drivers today in AI. Money, and the second one is to have the capacity to have a negative impact on the society. You mentioned the hackers, for example, who are investing a lot in AIs, because what they are targeting is not only the machine, but they are to be more smarter than the people. So my question is that one. From your experience, who is investing, and are we investing enough and quickly enough to avoid the BAs that you were mentioning?
Well, from my experience, the investment is the same as in usual industry. We probably always shortcut or cut off money from safety and security because it's seen as a cost and not a benefit. I'm afraid there's the same sort of bias in artificial intelligence. We want to progress and obtain wonderful results, which I clearly understand, and I love these results. But the risky side, probably we could improve that. And the negative aspects, some researchers have already published regarding the possible negative aspects, and some are spending a lot of money trying to overcome some of these aspects. But another time, they have to be financed. I don't know if they probably find a lot of things, but I'm not sure that they have enough money to overcome all the negative aspects. Does that give some tips for your question?
Yes, and I think it just confirmed that, as usual, the accident that you were mentioning are equivalent to the human accidents, the one with the cars. That's now the biggest one. We need maybe a bigger one to have a wake-up call for the authorities, for the politics to react, to invest.
Yeah.
That's unfortunate for me at this stage. No, but we already had an example in the US with the previous president being elected thanks to analytics and artificial intelligence. So
yes,
we already had one occurrence, but unfortunately nobody learned.
There's a big cyber attack.
Yeah,
apparently.
And I see that Laurent also has a question.
Yes, thank you very much, Jean, for this presentation. I'm sorry I missed a little part due to unpredictable situation. We have snowfalls today, and I have an emergency. So I will ask a question, very simple, but maybe you have already mentioned that in risks. In your slide 10, you mentioned the benefits, the ability to predict epidemic or pandemic.
Yes.
What is your feeling about the current situation? Because I read nearly 1 year ago on social networks that people thought that AI should be able to help us in managing the pandemic. And what is your feeling? I precise a little bit my question, since AI is based on data and reliability of data. And human behavior is human behavior or data. How can we predict human, individual, and collective behavior that is linked to the epidemic, pandemic spread? What is your feeling about that?
Well, I'm sorry, this question I cannot answer considering COVID-19. because I'm not sure all the data was available. We know that some data is still hidden in China. And what I just know is that up to now, looking at social networks, Google could predict how it was propagating due to the different conversation on the network. Now, this precise epidemic, I cannot say. I'm sorry. I didn't take time to study it long enough.
Maybe, yes. It's a bit too soon. But my question is about the reliability of data. I guess since data comes from object, IoT, for instance, it could be reliable. Human behavior is something much more difficult to analyze.
Yes, well, here again, we have to consider the data itself. You have the data, it is measured this way, and the interpretation of the data. And here already we can have a bias in the way we interpret the data. Can we say that a dozen conversations about the same epidemic means that you have a dozen people who are contaminated? Maybe we could feel this way, but maybe we should take care and say it's not so simple. So another time, the algorithm behind this data processing has to be thought of and interpreted. That's my feeling for the moment.
Okay,
Thank you very much, Jean. There will be a discussion at the end of this event, so I suggest we move now to our second speaker. So our second speaker is Valérie Gautard. She's responsible for an informal group called In the Art. In the Art is a project that aims to bring together different institutes around machine learning and to more generally around artificial intelligence. The project is led by the programme DRF, which is the Direction de Recherche Fondamentale Impulsion, within the CEA, which is the Commissariat à l'énergie atomique et aux énergies alternatives. So they deal with nuclear energy and with other alternative energies. Unfortunately, as we all have sometimes had this problem, Valérie's interconnection is not so stable, so she will not be able to connect her camera, but we should normally be able to hear her and see her slides. So, Valérie, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jessica. Could you share your screen, Jessica?
Normally, you should be seeing my slides.
Yes, I see it. Thank you, Jessica. As Jessica said, I am a researcher and engineer at Paris-Saclay CEA, which is part of the new University of Paris-Saclay in south of Paris. And I will present you next slide, please. Next slide. You move the slide?
Yes. Can you see the
yes, because
outline?
I don't see. No, I don't see. Yeah, yes. Now I see it. First of all, I will present you a very brief story of AI in CEA, then AI in CEA, and also a working group very active on the subject in the art. After, I will take two examples of AI applications. The first one on climate prediction, the second one on neurobiology. And I will end with some words on ethics. So let's me begin with a brief story on AI. Next slide, please. Next slide. Of course, the story of AI is related to the way we evolve on reasoning. Probably one of the first is Aristotle in 335 before Christ, who invented the inductive reasoning system. An example of such things is all humans are mortal, but all Athenians are human, therefore all Athenians are mortals. Of course, we all all know the limit of that way of thinking, but it was a very interesting way of trying to put theory on the way of thinking. Let's do now a big step into story. In 1942, Alan Turing shows that any form of mathematical reasoning can be made by a machine. He invented the so-called Turing test to check if a system is intelligent or not. A system is declared as being intelligent according to Turing if a human cannot distinguish if it comes from a machine or not. Let's take the example with two pictures of different sets of galaxies. In your opinion, which one is the picture of real galaxy? Which one is a picture from AI?
So we have just launched the poll. We have just launched the poll for you. You have received the link in the chat. So if I could invite participants to respond to the poll using the VBox tool. I'll just give you a moment all to respond. Okay, I will now stop the poll.
I don't see the results.
So in the results, 57% responded left and 42% responded right.
Next step. The real one is the right one and the fake one is the left one. With your screen precision, it is almost impossible to find. And to be honest, even experts could make a mistake. So a machine programmed by a human could mimic the human reasoning, but not more. Let's look how AI works in practice. Next slide, please. In AI, next slide. Yes, thank you. In AI, you have a lot of different methods. Neural networks is one of the main methods. McCulloch and Pitts in 1943 laid the foundation of formal neural network. McCulloch was a neurophysiologist, Pitts was a logician, and together they invented the neural network algorithm. Neural because it is mimic of a human neuron, and network because you have several neurons. To go fast, you make a linear combination between the neurons. John McCarthy in 1955 organized the famous Dartmouth Conference in order to attract attention. To advertise, he invented the term of artificial intelligence. Behind this name of artificial intelligence, we must understand what is hiding. It is not a very good name, in my opinion, because it's scary. This name doesn't aim to mean that computer, machine, or robot can overtake man. No, it is just to attract attention on this new method. So we must be aware of that. Let's now speak about AI in CEA. Next slide, please. The work in AI can be shared in three parts: computers, method, and application of this method. Let me begin with computer. First of all, mind 128, a little machine with 128 neurons. Remember, neuron was introduced by McCulloch and Pitts, and I present you. I had present you. Then we have Mind 1024, a neurocomputer built at CEA in 1990 with 1024 neurons, of course, and used for the development of learning algorithm and the simulation of physics system. That's for computer. For method and application, you have the PAN, Neural Action Plan, gather some searchers through CEA. Persons from high energy physics and nuclear physics are gathered in PAN and use neural network before 1990. Lab at CERN in Geneva use already machine learning method for reconstruction of the event, of the physical event. That's for the story of AI in CA. What about now? Again, I begin by computers. For the high performance computing, we have big machine at the military direction with Tera 100 and now Tera 1000. It is used for sensibility analysis, robust optimization, and HPC computing, of course. Concerning the software in CA, we develop some software like N2D2. For the method in AI, we must distinguish the search on the method and the use of this method on use case. For the method, we have search on trustworthy AI. Trustworthy AI means how we can trust the AI results. Symbolic AI. Symbolic AI is based on system of rules. The rules are set up by humans and integrated in machine. For example, we have AlphaGo 0, the algorithm playing the Go game just with rules. And we have another topic, explicability. Explain how AI works. For the application, we have AI transversal working group. I am chairing in the art. Next slide, please. In the art is an informal group on AI that I found in 2017. Now it gathers about 150 persons from beginner to expert interested in AI. This group aims at sharing the knowledge, but also to lead discussion in order to emulate of the different AI topics. Also, it allows to make technological watch, computing, algorithm, mathematics in the field of AI. This group is an open group with people coming from CA, of course, but also from CNRS and more generally from Paris-Saclay University. Your participation is more than welcome. You can send me an email. To do that, we organize some seminar once a month, seminar and discussion. The topics are shared between biology, physics, chemistry, and mathematics, but chemistry is not very well represented. And we must reinforce these topics. We organize training. Trainings are done by experts of our group. We had organized machine learning training, deep learning training, GAN, generative adversarial networks. We have a research project. We have some PhD thesis on various topics like climate, neurobiology, magnet, and so on. We have workshop. We will have one in March on 16 and 17, a machine learning workshop. And we have a website which is regularly updated, and you can find all the information. Next slide, please. After looking to a story and the environment of AI, let me go in more detail on some application of these methods. First of all, I will describe how to tackle a machine learning problem. This slide is very important because we will retrieve this reasoning through the example. You have the data in the field of your topics, for example, biology, physics, climate, or what you want. You must translate the data in the mathematics field. Then you choose a method. You have a lot of methods. We will see later. and you have your result always in mathematical field, and you translate again your result from the mathematical field to the initial field, the biologist, physics, what you want. Remember this scheme because we will use it through examples. Next slide, please. Forecast in climate science is very complex. Indeed, it is a multiple scale system in time and in area you are looking. We would like to predict weather at short term, a day, mid-term, a month, and long-term climate. So we may want to predict weather or climate at very different scale. Sometimes, in some other case, you don't have equation. You take machine learning methods because you have no other solution. But here we are lucky because we have the equation of state, we have data, and there is a lot of data since many years. Why using AI? Next slide, please. But running a general circulation model is very expensive in computing power and time. What can bring machine learning method? Could it save time and computing power? So could it save money at the end for identical precision, of course? Next slide, please. For data, we take the pressure at the sea level. So our task with machine learning method is to forecast pressure at short, mid, and long term. Here we have enough data to train the model and compare the result we predicted with real measurement. We are very lucky. Thus, we can see the precision of machine learning prediction. And we can see the gain we have compared to the previous method. So we are working on that this day. Next slide, please. Next slide. In machine learning fields, there is plenty of method. I told you. And so we must choose one. The one which is the most adapted to the problem we are studying is neural network. And thanks to Patak paper in 2018, which was this method. Next slide, please. In this slide, you see in the left. In this slide, you see in the left the target. Remember, we have a lot of data and we know the target. So we have the target. In the middle, we use neural network on the raw data. We just translate the data from the mathematical field from the climate field to the mathematical field, which means we scale the data and so on. But the results are not so good. I don't know if you can see, but the blue part don't move very well, and that's not accuracy. This region that doesn't move enough. So the idea is to add filter on data, and that improve a lot our result. You see that on the right, but I don't know if you see. I don't see me, but I don't know if you see. It's the blue part move enough, and we are more accuracy. Now, let me take another example in neurobiology. Here, the goal is to find neuroimaging signature of some brain disorder. It is very interesting to predict brain disorder because some of them may not appear if person avoid some behavior like drinking or smoking. In other case, low treatment could be necessary. Thus, this prediction may give sample preventive attitude. For that, you may take neuroimage of children, teenagers, and adults and predict which, with the children and teenager images, if the adult will develop some brain disorder. Let me go in more details now using the machine learning techniques. Next slide, please. Remember, next slide. Remember, we must translate the biological data in the mathematical field. In this case, it consists of a spatial normalization. In fact, each branch is very different. Some are big or little or so on. Thus first, we must calculate a spatial normalization. Since branch is not an homogeneous element. These preliminary calculations are not simple, is a topic in itself. After that, we take voxel, it is pixel in volume, and we analyze the gray matter volume. Once the data treatment is complete, we use neural network method again. And you understand with this example that in order to control this algorithm, we need several specialists to work together, like mathematician, doctor, computer specialist. We can apply this method for schizophrenia. Next slide, please. We could predict the signature of schizophrenia. This work is led with some hospital from Lille, Paris, and Paris suburban, and we predict schizophrenia with 76% of prediction accuracy. Is a very good result, and it could be improved in the future, of course, but it's good result now. Next slide, please. Let me tackle now with psychotic transition. Some patients could develop psychotic disorder. It is another type of brain disorder which could be avoided by this predictive method. Again, in this example, the idea is to help patient under the responsibility of doctor, of course. And you see here some three methods, Ridge, Lasso, and and you see we improve a lot. We improve our result, and we obtain 79% of good results. Now let me tell now some words of ethics. On ethics, ethics is our best friend. For example, we like Quant because it is an ethics search engine. In CEA, we had a group of reflection on moral issue in automatic decision-making process, and I belong to this group. As we have already seen before, the main problem is the training sample. This is a central problem, and before using AA, we must ask a question on the data. In my opinion, the first question is where the data come from. For example, Tai was an artificial intelligence chatterbot that was originally released by Microsoft via Twitter on March 23, 2016. It caused subsequent controversy when the bot began to post inflammatory and offensive tweets through his Twitter account. Causing Microsoft to shut down the services only 16 hours after it launched. What happens? According to Microsoft, this was caused by trolls who attacked the service. Indeed, the bot made reply based on its interaction with people on Twitter. One French citation from Descartes in French, science sans conscience n'est que ruine de l'âme. A second question, in my opinion, is the bias on data. The data could have bias, of course. I take an example. If the learning sample is biased, then the algorithm result will have the same bias. For example, obtaining a loan was made by machine learning. And it was found that foreign person obtain less loan. In fact, the learning sample was biased. A third question, horizon data, is the publication of the data. Data publication is a very big problem, and we must be aware what we are doing in publishing data. For example, when you publish your genomic data, you publish not only your data, but the data from your parents and your children too. You must be aware of that. Another topic is explicability. Explicability is very important because it reassures. Explicability is very complicated. Must we have always explication? With autonomic car, we could save life. I ask the question, explicability, it is so important. I don't know. We will discuss together. Thank you for your attention. Thank you to Marc Duranton, Edouard Duchesne, David De Faranda, and all. And thank you for your attention. If you have questions, I can answer.
Oh, thank you very much, Valérie, for that very interesting presentation. Are there any questions which people would like to raise? As you know, you can either do them via the raise hand tool or using the VBox tool itself. So if there are no questions for clarification, maybe we can now open the floor for a more open discussion between the speakers and between all of you guys who have decided to join this webinar.
Valérie, could you try to open your camera, at least to see your face a little bit?
Yes, I can. You see me, and now it's we could work like that.
So I see, Luke, you have raised your hand.
Yeah, Valérie, thanks for the presentation. Very interesting, and it's interesting to see the way you are using all this data power. But something which is striking me always when I see this discussion and you compare with the problem and the potential problem of AI, where I try to make the bridge is any human will not be able to do better than your computer in terms of the conclusion of all the data. You say that you have BAs of data, but human also have BAs of data. The quality of the data that you receive, human has the same. And human has less power than the computer to deduce something out of those data. So, and in your studies, how do you treat this second dimension? Is it something that you treat carefully to compare with human, or is it something that you process as a mass and then you look at the end and then realize what's your problem?
I don't hear very well because I have a bad connection. The question I will repeat because I don't hear all the word. The question is how could we tackle the bias? How I don't hear the question.
I will make it shorter. So the first one, all your systems, they are suffering from the same disease than the human in terms of data quality and all the BAs. Is it a good conclusion?
Yes. I'm not sure I have good understand, but what I mean is the data are biased by human, and the machine treat what you give, what data you give, and in my opinion, it's not AI who is responsible of the results, but human who give data. and you must be careful with data. That's why I put the slide on ethic, because I think data is very, very important, and if data are biased, machine don't overtake human. Machine just has more power than human, for sure. You cannot compute as a computer. That's okay, but I think we must be careful with data. I don't know if I answer your question, because I don't hear very well.
Yeah, and so you answer very, very well, because that was the point that you mentioned. The quality is very important. Now the second question: are you within your artificial intelligence investigation or whatever research? Are you also trying to make the machine smarter to detect if the data are BAs or not? It's a difficult one.
Yes, it's difficult. It's difficult question. There is now, I saw in a conference, there is now AI could detect if it's AA.
Okay.
Yes, it's a snake, but you have, for example, you have a machine picture made by AA, and you have some AI methods could detect if it's real images or not. You have that. I saw that, but I don't know very well to answer your question. Your question is very difficult for me.
Yeah, but it would be nice if there is a process to assist and to help to figure out if there is a BAs or not before computing all the conclusion, if you see what I mean.
Yes, sure, for sure, it will be nice, for sure.
But that's
well,
to you.
Maybe an element, if I may. The bias is probably something of a concept. If a machine can just detect shapes or words or data and cannot detect the concept behind it, maybe there's the lack. I'm not sure if it's an element to answer this sort of question, but I feel that there's something regarding the concept itself. Isn't there?
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So we have one question that has come in from Vivok. So Christine Marlet asks whether there are any ethical guidelines for data collection and data interpretation. So maybe Jean, do you want to take that, or Valérie?
Valérie, please.
Oh, thank you. Guideline is, in my opinion, to before to tackle problems is ask a question on ask the three questions: where data come from, what our data are biased or not. I think if you ask this question, it is good, but and it's a very open question. I don't know very well answer. What do you mind about, Jean?
Well, I think you're right. First thing is logically to understand how the data was gathered and what sort of shape it has. Very often, data results from measurements. Can we describe completely something just through measurements? I'm not quite sure, but very often we manage to do some correct calculation because we picked up the measurements that were interesting for this calculation. So it's probably more a question of what is the quality of the data and what sort of data we want to process and how, in order to make to produce a result that makes sense. I don't know if it's some element of answer, but maybe not the proper answer. I don't know.
So we have another question that has come in, and they ask, is a robot a product, legally speaking, or is it a system? And if it's a product, does product legislation need to be reviewed to take this into account? Jean or Valérie?
Could you repeat the question, because I don't understand the whole word, because I have a bad connection, please.
So is a robot a product, legally speaking, or a system? And does product legislation need to be reviewed to take this into account?
Thank you. Jean, you could begin.
Yeah, well, for the moment, it's I would say it's difficult to say that legislation should be reviewed, because if we do it in the way to take off responsibility from some human beings, I'm not sure it's the good axis or the good direction. Now, if the legislation is to give responsibility to some people and define who is responsible for what, that means, for instance, the builder, the AI designer, the owner of the product, of the system, probably we'll get to something quite solid. But if we say that the machine itself has a sort of legal existence, some legal persons are thinking of that, I'm afraid it will take off responsibility from off of many people, and it could lead to disorder. That's a personal opinion, but I'm ready to discuss about it.
Yes, I would like to add, we discuss of the responsibility is a part of subject, but in my opinion, we must discuss to the data, who belongs the data, our on the publication of the data, and I think it must be discussed with lawyer and so on, because it's when you give your data, it's not just you give your data. You can give the data are not yours, and it is another topic, in my opinion, we must discuss about.
So if I understand you, Valérie, we need first to understand the ethics of data.
Yes.
And basically now we are in a world where everybody collect data a little bit how they want and use it how they want.
Yeah.
So did you hear in your environment anybody telling you that they are working on data ethic?
Yes, because I work with a person who work on genomic, and genomic is a very difficult field because you can save life. If you have the data, the genomic data, you can avoid the disease. You can make search, you can make research and avoid disease, and that's a good way, of course. But when you give your genomic data, you give the genomic data cannot be anonymous. It is impossible, and I think it's a very difficult field because we must save disease first of all, in my opinion, but we must not do anything, and you must be careful with this data. And in my opinion, it's very difficult to know what we must do. Do you understand what I mean?
It's completely in view of the recent event. I understand really very well. So I think we need to study this field very well, as you say.
Yeah,
and
sure.
It should maybe a PhD thesis, but on a multidisciplinary way, because you need lawyers, you need, as you say, mathematician, physician, biology. But I think it's worth it, maybe.
Yes, but you must add sociologist.
And sociologist,
yeah. But it's a very. I think we must discuss with very different fields, as you say, because mathematician will his part. Doctor would like to save life, and of course lawyer have our part to play. Yes.
Well, it is a political issue, in fact.
In fact, yeah.
If I may, for me, the lawyers are engaging once we have decided on the law. And from what I'm hearing, correct me if I'm wrong, it's that it's not yet mature enough to be able to write it down. What are the laws? And now the question is, and maybe it's a political question, is are we engaging quickly enough to produce the adequate law, and will we be able to follow the pace? Because if we start to think about the situation today to produce in a few months or a year a law for the situation today will not be the accurate for tomorrow. I think that's another challenge, and for the lawyers and for the human and for the people, because as you were explaining, you are also facing in other areas, being finance, being insurance, being they are also playing with a lot of information. And how do they use that? What are they doing with that? I think that's something that we didn't mention yet on the quality of the data. So we discussed about GDPR, and that's where we were also, and I'm sure that the lawyers are close to that, because that's already a defined law. There are a lot of information that we can aggregate, but thanks to the AI and the computer capacity, even if you anonymize data, you can bypass that by smarter machine and smarter algorithms. So that's also where lawyers need maybe to be involved.
Well, I heard some lawyers also discussing that sort of topic. Can you put some artificial intelligence to judge cases? And for instance, scan all the different similar cases in order to build some common sense judgment. And the lawyers themselves say that there's a vital aspect is it could lead lawyers to just follow the artificial intelligence and no more think personally of the case and adapt the case to the situation. So there's a bias here that has to be also discussed a lot.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. Sorry, Luc?
No, go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say a big thank you to our two speakers, to Jean and to Valérie, for having prepared such interesting presentations in order to present what is actually a very complex topic and which we could probably spend many days on discussing. So before handing over to the Global Women's Hub, to Christine and to Geraldine to provide their closing remarks, I would just like to remind everybody that it'd be really great if you could complete the feedback survey at the end of this event. It'll only take you 2 minutes and it will really help us for future webinars. Thank you. Christine.
Thank you too to invite me.
For your participation. I have nothing to add to what we have been discussing. I think that we need maybe to set up working groups with CA and other people and you, Jean, to think further in ethical issues. But I leave the word to Geraldine, who wish to tell you about the next webinar.
Yes, thank you, Christine. Once again, thank you really much to Jean and Valérie. And I'm indeed pleased to announce that the Global Women Hub will host its next webinar on the 8th of March, same timing as today. So pencil this date in your agenda. The invitation will follow soon. And on that occasion, we'll celebrate the International Women's Day. And we've chosen a topic, I think, that's close to our and your hearts, being gender equality. And believe me, you'll embark on a great journey with Marco Hellemans, who will be our next guest speaker. And Marco is really an expert on the topic and will guide you through. So I'm really looking forward already to the next session and to seeing you all there. And in the meantime, take care of yourselves as well and stay safe. And thank you again to Jean and Valérie. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to all. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye and thank you again.
Bye and take care.
Bye.